Welcome everybody to Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a thru hiker. I am a backpacker. I am a huge hiking nerd. And every single week on this podcast, I chat with other hiking nerds about their experiences on the trail. And Dan Becker, the man himself, is on the show this week. I said it a few times, but I'll say it again. This one's been a long time coming. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but if you've seen my YouTube channel before, you'll know about the history that Dan Becker and I have together with all the jokes and goofs and gags I used to make at his expense in my videos. It was a core part of, which sounds so stupid to say, but it was really a core part of my channel for a long time. And even now, I'll still make some jokes every now and again about him. And so, I mean, it's about time we got him on the show. He's been requested a bunch over the last few years, and we finally made it happen, and it was such a fun conversation. Dan really kind of takes on some of the, I don't even know how to say this, some of the criticism, I guess, but just some of the crap that's been talked about him over the years. We talk about that. We talk about some YouTube stuff, of course, some of the history that we have together. And at the end, he shares a pretty crazy story that happened to him that I don't think he's really ever talked about on his channel before. And so it was awesome. I'm so grateful that he was willing to take the time. And so, Dan, when you hear this, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Folks, if you enjoy the show, if you're a new listener, maybe you watch Dan Becker's channel and that's why you're tuning in this week, I'd really appreciate it if you checked out some other episodes. I've got a lot of episodes, almost 150 here, that you can go back and listen to. And also check out my channel. It's called Kyle Hates Hiking on YouTube. With that said, let's get into it. Episode number 147 with who else but Dan Becker. All right, big episode, folks. It's been a long time coming. We got the man himself, Dan Becker, on Trail Tales. Dan, thank you so much for doing this. How's it going?
What is up, Kyle? We finally are together on some form of social interaction.
Yes, it really has been a long time coming. I mean, with especially for the history of my channel and all the goofs and gags at your expense. We're going to talk about that. Oh, yeah.
You have a YouTube channel? Do you have one? Or?
I have one, and I'm creeping up. I'm creeping up in subs, too. I'm getting close to Dan Becker levels, so keep an eye on that. No.
I think I've seen a few. Yeah. Or many comments on my channel about your channel.
You might have
People ask you, what's that?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was going to say, people ask me all the time if we're related.
Yeah.
Like if I'm your dad or something.
There's been a few rumors and a couple Photoshops too. But no,
That's awesome.
I'm so excited to have Dan on the show. I want to start by just telling a quick little story. So back when I was under 1,000 subscribers still. My channel was still in its, infancy. And, Dan, your channel was, I don't know exactly. I think you were maybe somewhere around 10,000. So it's certainly not where it is today, but at that point you had certainly established an audience and you had a lot of momentum and people knew who you were. And so back, this must have been late 2019. I think I had made a few jokes in some of the early videos about you or whatever. And so I can't remember how we got connected, but we did somehow. And just for everybody listening, obviously I've made all these jokes about Dan over the years, and every now and then, maybe not so much anymore, but especially back then, I would get not a lot, but I would get messages or comments being like, why do you hate Dan so much? Like, what's the beef? And I would always say, well, I don't actually hate him. And the thing is, way back, at this time, Dan got on the phone with me and we talked for over an hour.
Yep,
I remember. I was just like pacing around my bedroom at the time, and he was giving me advice on just all things YouTube and just being so encouraging. And that meant so much to me because, like I said, at the time, you had already established your channel pretty good, and I was just getting started. I was, nobody watched my channel back then. I don't even think I had 1,000 subscribers yet. And the fact that Dan took the time to talk to me for over an hour on the phone, mind you, and we didn't really know each other at all. That just meant so much to me, and I think that speaks to just kind of the kind of person that Dan is. And then also I'll say, since then, Dan has given me so much advice about YouTube, all things related to, growing a channel and turning this into something that you can do as a full-time job. And I'm not just trying to flatter you, Dan. I really don't think that my channel would be where it's at today if it wasn't for all the help that you've given me, let alone all the jokes and all that stuff too. So I appreciate that. No, dude, I appreciate you. It's been so helpful. You've really been a mentor for me, and I really don't think that things would be the way they are today if it wasn't for all that help. So I'm excited to have you on the show. And,
man, I vividly remember that actually, because I'm pretty sure I remember subscriber counts. You were right around 700. Okay. I was probably around 40,000 because I was in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember where I was at. I was in Canada on a business trip, of YouTube related business trip, and somebody had sent me your video, like it was like the truth about Dan Becker or something. And I was like, this dude knows me better than I know me.
That's so funny.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to connect with this guy. This is awesome. And I just remember, I think I reached out to you originally, and I was like, hey, we should connect or something. And then, I remember sitting on the phone, and that was awesome. Yeah, no, totally. I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You are a much better YouTuber than you give yourself credit for, obviously.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're doing great.
I appreciate that. And, it's just like, not that subscriber counts and, follower counts and all this stuff are, the be all end all. But like for someone with, I guess, 40,000-ish subscribers to take that much time to help out someone, with under 1,000 still, like, I think that just means a lot. That's not something that has really, not something that I see happening very often. And in hindsight, it really was like pretty important to me. And even to the point where I've, tried to take time and chat with other people who, kind of the roles reversed, who might have some questions. Exactly. And so, I don't know, it was awesome.
Cool.
I want to talk more about some of the, I don't even know if we've really ever talked too much about like the dynamic between us, especially with like all the jokes on my channel and stuff. And I want to get into that. But first, I think it's best to just kind of back up. I'm sure most people are familiar with you, but just for those that aren't, who is Dan Becker? Talk about, your experience backpacking and your YouTube channel, and just give a good old introduction to Dan Becker.
Okay, yeah. Man, I have not been backpacking that long, surprise, since about 2015.
According to some comments, you've never been backpacking ever.
That's right, exactly. I only backpack in my backyard. There was. It's funny enough. There was an article written about me on a website where they called me the cyber hiker.
What?
So I was the only one. Yeah. I was the guy that just decided to hike in my backyard, and that was it. So. Yeah, the guy who gives backpacking tips from his backyard, which is pretty funny. Anyway, so I started in 2015 hiking, and then in 2018 I started my channel. Like everybody else, we just started on accident. It just sort of happened, and then and that was it. So here I am. I make videos for YouTube.
Yes, he does.
Yep.
Okay, so. Let's see. I'm trying to think back because it's been I've been doing this for a number of years now too. It's like when I first started my channel, most people listening have probably seen my videos, but not everybody. So I'll try to give a little bit of context. There are some people that just listen to the podcast. I've seen a few Reddit comments that are like, "Oh yeah, I like his podcast, but I can't stand his videos," which fair, fair. But anyway, so I right from the start of my channel. Which is kind of ironic given the turn things have taken lately, but I wanted to make like humor and comedy a part of my thing. I thought that was a way that I could kind of set myself apart from the other hiking channels, and it's also just who I am. I'm just a goofy guy. And so I guess I just had this idea early. There was never even a moment that I can remember distinctly where I was like, oh, I'm going to make like Dan Becker jokes. I think I just probably made one or two in a video. And I also made fun of other YouTubers too back then. Like I definitely had a couple jokes about Darwin and Jupiter and all these people back then. But the Dan Becker ones just seemed to stick. And
I'm an easy target, man.
You are an easy target. And now that I think about it, I think maybe some of the inspiration from that was, I hate to say it, but some of the other jokes about you on like Reddit and some of this other nonsense. Maybe that was some of the inspiration too. I don't know. But
that's awesome.
Anyways, I developed this kind of running gag on my channel, and so clearly you were made aware of it at some point. Did you know about my channel before that video that I made? I can't believe I literally made a video about you back then. Wow.
I don't think so. I think somebody had just sent me that video.
Yeah, which is
somehow I got a hold of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was about you, which that still blows. But
yeah, but you're not
looking back on it, to be honest.
No. It's actually smart because you're not the first person to do that. Like a lot of people have made videos about me, but like, it's interesting because it's like if you're into YouTube, it's a smart thing to put a bigger YouTube channel in your title because you'll get noticed, you'll get clicks. Somebody will be like, oh, well, what is wrong with this guy? I've done it to myself. Like I did it last like 5 or 6 months ago. I did a video called "This YouTuber is a complete fraud," and I had a picture of myself on there. And I didn't, the only way you would have known it was my video is if you saw my channel below it, but it didn't look like it was from me. So I kind of sort of did it to myself just to see what people would, and it did. It worked really well. People clicked on it like crazy, but yeah. But I do remember your channel. I do vividly.
And
I cried every time I watched it.
I don't know. What did you think? I guess if we got connected shortly after, and there was kind of that personal connection there shortly after you discovered my channel, then maybe that would have skewed things a little bit. But what did you think of the jokes in those early videos?
Oh,
the jokes
I loved them. I do not. I am not easily offended at all. I love that kind of stuff. And plus, if people are joking about you, making fun of you, that probably means that you're maybe a bigger name than you even give your own self credit for. So there's obviously something to that, and people know you, So you were at least like, you talked off to the side all the time. So like I've been talking for years. So off to the side, there were even times you're like, hey man, I'm going to post this video and I'm going to be saying this. Are you cool about that? I'm like, dude, it's your channel, man. Have at it, Mm-hmm. And like, but there were other channels who were, the idea behind their channel was to be blatantly, like, it was not poking fun. It was legitimately like to destroy Dan Becker. You know what I mean? Like that magazine article. So I would love to say the name of the website, but I'm sure I'll tick a lot of people off if I do. But yeah, no, they're a very well known hiking website.
You have to tell me years ago. I'm curious.
Yeah, they wrote it, and then somebody actually started commenting under the it's not explicitly like, it doesn't say Dan Becker in it, but it was obviously about me because it was at sort of towards my rise. Of coming on YouTube and getting known. And then somebody started commenting as me under the video, like pretending to be me.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry, not the video, the article on their website. And so it was just like a whole thing. Yeah. And then so I sort of had to, like, for years, for probably 2 years straight, I always felt like I had to prove myself as this like backpacking channel. I had this like imposter syndrome, like, well, geez, I do live in Wisconsin, so immediately I must not backpack, right? Because I live in Wisconsin, so there's nowhere to backpack here, according to everybody else. So, yeah, and then if you're trying to do this full time, it's like, well, I can't go backpacking weekly, as right? You got to make studio videos. So when you can get out, you're filming like crazy, and so it was just a whole, and then it just kind of came this running thing. But I think it's at least what I could tell, it's that whole thing is gone now, but early on it was the running joke on YouTube for sure.
And I guess, if you could, strategy seems not like the right word, but my intention with it, making the jokes about you on my channel, was to never do anything like mean spirited, right? Like I always wanted to keep it funny, and And I did want to push the line a little bit, but I never wanted it to cross. I guess.
My favorite when you'd hang a sign in the background, something like "I hate Dan Becker." So
Dan Becker sucks. Yeah, there was
yeah,
I put a sign on the wall in our basement for a video one time, and then I just never took it down. So for like 2 years, there was just a wall in our basement that just said a sign on the wall in the basement that just said Dan Becker sucks, and I definitely got a couple questions about that from my friends who didn't follow the YouTube
that's
thing.
awesome.
They're like, "What the hell is going on?" So it was funny. But another story I wanted to tell you, Dan. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. So I guess it must have been shortly after I started making the Dan Becker jokes, but before we got connected. So we had never talked. We didn't know each other personally yet. I had this idea where I was going to sit down and I was going to react to one of your videos. And I turned the camera on. I started screen sharing. I started watching one. I don't even remember which video. Oh, maybe it was the one where it was like Christmas ideas for backpackers or something.
yeah. One of those cheesy videos.
Yeah. And so I was going to frame it as like, actual backpacker sits down and reacts to, fake backpacker Dan Becker. And I sat down and I just started riffing as I kind of do in most of my videos. And I got about maybe a third of the way through the video and something just didn't feel right. Like I just felt like I was being too mean-spirited. And I think the intention was maybe not to be mean per se, but I was going to really go in on you. And I got like a third of the way through this video and I stopped. I couldn't do it. I was like, this is just mean and it's just not right. And I don't know. I just felt bad about it. And I'm really glad that I didn't go through with it because I think that just the way that I was doing it, I think that it would have crossed that line for sure into just being another one of those channels, talking actual shit and not just, being as funny. And so I'm really, really glad. And because like I said, this is before we got connected. So before I knew, how much of a good guy you were personally. Not that I didn't think you were, but, I hadn't experienced that yet. And so I'm really glad that I didn't make that video. I'm sure it would have gotten some clicks or whatever, but like it definitely was not worth it.
I would love to see. Right. I would love to see the recording sometime.
It's long gone. It's long gone. It's actually kind of funny. I'm pretty sure. When I stopped recording, I was like, well, I still need to make a video. And so I'm pretty sure what I did, actually, I'm pretty sure I sat down right after that and I made a backpacker Christmas gifts idea.
You did? That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure that's awesome. What I did. Which, I don't think you were the first one to do that, but it was definitely in my head because of that.
It's so funny. I wish, part of me wishes every backpacker out there was forced to make 10 YouTube videos, even if they never had a YouTube channel, just so they can see what it's like. And they too would make a backpacker Christmas special gift video. I mean,
it's a good idea. It really is.
It's like, but like you, what people don't realize, and you obviously realize because you're now doing this, you're as a business, if you're going to spend any time doing this. People say all the time, well, I'll do YouTube videos and I'm just going to do it as a hobby. And I'm just going to be the one that's never going to do this and I'm never going to be like those other YouTubers. And then they get like 10 videos in there and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. I have no return. Like, what am I supposed to do? Everybody at some point, you can't do it for free. You have to make money doing this because otherwise you're saying no to something else in your life. So it's like people don't realize that on the other side of the camera, and they put you in this like category, like you're not supposed to be, X. But unfortunately, the reality is of any time that you spend doing something like this, you have to have an income doing it at some point. And it got to the point where I got to be able to do this full time. I think you're doing yours full time now, right?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, right. So like you're just like you're doing it full time, and now it's like okay. It's a legitimate business. So unfortunately, those Christmas backpacking videos, they end up being there because, you're pushing products to a degree, you're making some sort of an income from it, being real and being honest in the meantime, but like, people got to sit through it,
Yeah. But people enjoy them too. And that's another thing. It's like, when people think like, oh, you're just doing it for the money or whatever, it's like you're not going to be able to have a successful channel. You're not going to be able to make money unless you are providing value to people. You can't just
for sure.
put a bunch of nonsense out there. And I think that's something that people, I don't even know if they don't understand it or they just don't think about it. But it's like you don't get to the level that, either one of us are at in terms of YouTube without providing value to people. That's the only way to do it. So it's not just it's not just all about the money. Like you have to make good videos that people enjoy watching, that entertain and teach people too. So it's not just all about the money as much as some of the trolls like to say. And I get that every now and again, but I know that you've gotten that a lot over the years. And
I think the reason I got that probably more than anybody else, because as far as I'm aware, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I'm fairly certain I'm correct. No one was making sponsored content in the hiking backpacking world until I started making
I think you're
sponsored
right.
content.
Yeah, I think
I was the first one, so I took a lot of heat for that,
which I'm very grateful for, because actually this was one of the things I was going to bring up at some point, so this is perfect. I think it made it easier for folks like myself to kind of start doing it and receive less backlash from it as well. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, and I think it was, the trolls, the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing. Like the trolls they're the ones commenting, and they're the ones that, even if you get 100 great comments, the one negative comment always seems to stick out, right, in your mind when on video. And so it's all, you tend to see those ones. But, the reality is that there's every channel you go to, if you see a sponsored video on YouTube, like if a YouTuber is doing something and it's sponsored content, it's not like they're like, oh, I can't wait to make sponsored content. It's like, oh crap, I can't pay the bills unless I have sponsored content. Mm-hmm. It's like, because YouTube just doesn't, this YouTube's ad revenue doesn't, it pays okay, but you've got editors to pay, you've got bills to pay, you got so unfortunately you got to do it. And, it is what it is.
And there are other channels that maybe find other ways, but there has to be another way besides just YouTube AdSense, which I think is the main takeaway. And brand deals, sponsorships are just a great way to do that. And it's kind of funny too, because like you said, you were, most likely the first backpacking, hiking niche YouTuber to do brand deals, but other niches on YouTube had been doing them for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And so
for sure.
it was kind of interesting, and we've talked about this a little bit before. Yeah. It's like there was this weird thing where it was like, for some reason, backpacking YouTubers, and even to this day, there's other backpacking YouTubers that I think are maybe uncomfortable with them or just don't want to do them. And that's totally fine. That's their prerogative. But it's like other niches on YouTube have been doing them for a long time. And so I always found it kind of bizarre that like there was this weird stigma around doing them in our niche specifically, which I don't think exists. Yeah. It definitely doesn't exist anymore. Thankfully, probably a largely due to yourself kind of breaking that mold. But isn't that weird? Like why is that with our niche specifically?
I think early on, because hikers by nature tend to be pretty just organic people that don't want to have a lot of outside influence. That's kind of why they go into the middle of the back country, and so I think maybe that they come to YouTube just hoping that that's going to be the case too. Like if I'm watching a hiking channel, I don't want to be disturbed with the outside world of a sponsored ad or feel like I'm being sold to or whatever. But unfortunately, it is what it is, and it's not like there's a right way to do. We can get into the weeds on YouTube, but like. There's a right way to do sponsored ads and there's a wrong way to do sponsored ads. And, and so like, if you're honest and you're real and you're not making it a nuisance and you're not lying to people and, then you can get away with that sponsored ad. But if you're making the person feel like, this guy's all about the money, this isn't right, this is, then, people are going to click off your video. So, but that was something I had to learn throughout the process too, to make it sort of feel, just fluid, I guess, when you're trying to sit through a video. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I totally agree that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I think that most people that get to our level on YouTube
which I feel so. See, I still just feel like kind of icky saying that, but I'm not trying to be like, bragging.
Hey man, you got the plaque.
I got the plaque.
You got the plaque.
So it's like, I think that most people that make it to our level, I guess, they are doing it the right way. And it's like, as long as you are being genuine about it. And this is something I'm pretty sure I actually made a video about this even before I had any sponsors. And I was like, if I ever get to the level where I'm doing sponsors, it's like, as long as you believe in the product and as long as you are being clear that it's a sponsored video too, you're not like sneakily, pretending it's not.
Yeah, right.
You're not being paid. And my experience too with sponsors, and I'm sure it's been the same for you, is it's like the sponsors themselves want you to be clear that it's sponsored because they can get in a lot of trouble, and you can get in trouble too if you are being paid for something but you don't disclose that. So I don't know. As long as you're doing it in an honest way, it's like at this point, I almost never receive any backlash from it. In fact, I've gotten a lot of good feedback from some of the brands that I've worked with on YouTube, and so fortunately, I think at this point the stigma is pretty much gone in our niche, which is a good thing for sure, because it also allows like smaller channels who maybe who they have an audience but they're not making enough money from AdSense to like fully support, or even maybe not even support themselves, but just to be able to put more into the channel and get a return there and make better videos. It allows them to make a little bit of extra money too. So if anything, it's actually really helpful for smaller channels that people out there that are listening might watch. Oh, yeah.
For sure.
It's great for everybody. And if you don't want to watch the ad, just skip through it. I still, even when I watch back some of my old videos, I'll skip through my own ads. It's like it's fine.
Exactly.
We want you to support the sponsors and everything, of course, but like at the end of the day, I just want you to watch the video, most importantly. So
right, exactly.
It's like it's interesting. And it's interesting that you kind of broke that mold there. And another, I don't want to just make this all about like what people say about Nate Becker, but a thing you touched on earlier that I wanted to talk about is some of the people calling you the backyard hiker or whatever. And honestly, I've probably made some jokes about that in the past. I can't really remember. I probably said that.
Well deserved. I
don't think so though, because I think it's pretty obvious now, I think. But for the people that say this stuff about you, maybe less so now than they used to, but it's like you're flying out all the time to go backpacking.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you say this guy never backpacks when you're commenting that on a video of him literally, somewhere in the Rockies or wherever. Like he clearly does backpack. So I think it'd be good to kind of dispel that myth a little bit. Because you've gone all over the place now.
Yep. Yeah. So I think in reality, the one who probably gets the most angry about comments like that is my wife. And the reason for that, the reason for that is because she is like, he travels all the time, and you're going to tell me he does, like, he's not, like, because I'm up until my whole episode in the Grand Canyon, and if nobody's ever seen that, we can totally get into that, or they can go watch the video of how I got rescued in the Grand Canyon and had to take the last 4 months off. Up until then, I was gone. The year before that, I counted like 16 backpacking trips I took, which is more than one a month, which is, I'm 45 years old. I got 3 kids and a wife, and like you tell that to your family, like, hey, I'm going to take 16 trips this year. It's a lot. It's a lot. Right. Yeah. So like, and I remember somebody arguing with me in the comments. Sometimes I try to avoid trolls in comments, but one time, man, I just got into it with this guy, and he just wouldn't let up. And I'm just like, bro, I did 16 backpacking trips. What else do you want from me? You know?
Yeah.
But I think people say that too. Like if I make a video in my studio or something, but these comments are hardly ever there anymore. This is like a couple of years ago when I get a lot more of this stuff, but like, if it was in like my backyard, I was making a video, or here, and this, like if you're on trail, right? If you're making videos on trail, one video is a lot of work. One video is a lot of work. And then you've got, you go home for the next 3-4 weeks and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to make a video a week. What am I going to do? Well, you just, you batch film your videos on a trip. So you're making videos about all these new products. You're thinking of, different products you can test. And so there's, you come home and you end up making these studio versions of your trip videos, but so it's, you can't please everybody, that's fine.
You never can. And people still like those studio videos. I mean, they're great. Like, I've made tons of them, way more of those than I ever have on trail videos. And so it's like, people still like those, and you can still add a lot of value there. So the people who say that or said that stuff in the past are super silly. They don't really know what's up. And I don't know, but don't worry about those people. I guess one more thing I wanted to say just about kind of the dynamic between us. Do you ever feel like the jokes and stuff? I mean, I think you've made it very clear to me that, like, you were never against me making those jokes, and it actually seemed like you found them quite humorous. But was there ever anything that came as a direct result for my videos that I don't know, any mean comments or anything bad that came as a direct result?
See, but I knew the whole time, right? Because we would talk off to the side, so I just knew it was a running gag. So it never bothered me a bit. It is funny how people, I still get comments all the time today, like, "Oh, Kyle wouldn't like you doing that," or "Kyle this," or whatever, or "Are you Kyle's dad? Maybe he's your son," or or whatever. Or, "Did you like kick Kyle out of the house when he was a kid?" Like, so there are people that like legitimately think that, which I think is hilarious that they actually think that, because like, how could they watch your channel for that long and not realize like how
I know, right?
so ignorant to the fact that like we've been friends for whatever it's been, like 3 years. So
it's funny. It's funny. And I don't know, I've kind of phased out the jokes at this point. Every now and again, if I just think of one on the spot, maybe I'll throw it in, but for the most part, I don't.
And what's funny is that I purposefully, almost as a side gag, have never addressed it on my channel, specifically for that reason. Like, I thought it was funnier that I never said anything about it, like as if I just didn't know or something, and people had to always come tell me, "Hey, there's this guy making videos about you." Oh, like, really? What? I had no idea.
That's funny too. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely, the overwhelming majority of people who saw it obviously knew it was a joke. But I did get some comments and some messages sometimes being like, "Dude, thank you for talking shit about Dan Becker. Like, I hate this guy." Like, and I'm just like, "Dude, what are you doing?"
Yeah, it's so funny.
I remember what I was going to say earlier too, and it kind of relates to this. It's like, my theory, and I could be way off on this, so feel free to correct the record, but I feel like maybe a reason why the whole backyard thing, backyard hiker or whatever, came about is I feel like maybe when you first started YouTube, it was more dominated by the thru hiking channels, like Dixie and Darwin, or at least the biggest channels were maybe more primarily thru hikers. And so this other guy comes along and starts to get some traction that's not thru hiking. And I think that maybe that had something to do with it. So people were kind of comparing the channels, and they're like,
oh, for sure.
I don't know.
For sure.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And then also just logistically. So like, it's like I beat a dead horse when I say this, but people need to understand, I live in the Midwest. I live in Wisconsin, in a suburb. I live directly between Chicago and Milwaukee. In order for me to go backpacking, I have to drive a minimum of 6 hours in any direction to find a place where I can just go backpacking. Like, so that's just logistically what it takes for me to do that. So it was like, what am I going to do? Every single week I'm going to go, it was. And then plus, when you first start a channel, this, you don't have a library of footage of you backpacking. You've never filmed your backpacking trips before. You've gone on a bajillion, but you've never like filmed yourself as a YouTuber. So it was like, it's just like, all right, here I had, I didn't know that I was going to get all that traction. People just, I was able to talk to a camera and connect to people, and people enjoyed it. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that was part of it too. So like, I was a guy from Wisconsin. I wasn't a guy from the West, like in the Rockies or California or Utah or somewhere out there where like they were born and raised like on a trail.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
Logistically, that's just how it happened. And so I think that was what, so when you see a guy like me come on board and you're just, well, what does this guy know? Oh my gosh, he's in his backyard talking about backpacking. Oh, let's write an article about him, you know? So
silly.
that's just how it all,
super silly.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've talked about too, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you'll agree with this, is that the people, I think, primarily that are watching your channel are not thru hikers, right? And so I think a big reason why you found so much success is because it really does seem like you are your target audience. Like you are 100%. Quite literally, you know, them. And a lot of these people that watch backpacking YouTube, especially some of the stuff that's not thru hiking related, especially the gear stuff, you know, they're going out maybe 1 or 2 times a year. And a big way that they stay connected to backpacking when they're not able to go out is through gear. They're buying new gear or even just researching new gear. They like to, you know, stay updated on what the new stuff is and what other people are using, even if they're not going to buy it themselves. And so, you know, you really kind of pulled those folks in so perfectly. And that is a distinct group from the thru hikers. Yeah. It really is.
So I realized about a year into my channel, it took me about a year to realize who my audience was, because I had that massive imposter syndrome for a while. And I always felt like I had to not pretend, but like talk like a thru hiker, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, so it took me about a year before I realized, and I got smart enough to go, oh my gosh, there's a lot of thru hikers, but there are way more average people who just are kind of weekend warriors, dads, you know. I mean, the amount of people on that end is 100 times more than thru hikers out there. Not that there's anything wrong with thru hiking. Don't get me wrong. Okay, I love thru hikers. But then when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can finally be me and lean into it. And I think it resonated with a lot of people. So they saw this guy who wasn't this, you know, scraggly bearded dude living out of a van and eating oatmeal. Sorry, thru hikers. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he's just this guy who's doing this. And I think people were like, oh, finally, there's somebody out here like me. I don't have to feel like this pro athlete to go backpacking. I don't have to hike 20, 30 miles a day. I can hike 5. I can hike 8. I can hike 10. You know what I mean? So, and they felt like they were capable. And so I feel like that was a big part of it too. And I think that just resonated with people, and people kind of jumped on board.
Yeah, definitely did. And that's in like I said, you've talked about this with me before. And so that really helped me a lot too, kind of hearing that, because I feel like at first I was maybe catering more towards the thru hikers. I mean, that's kind of where my roots are. But I've also tried to kind of capture that broader audience and maybe make some stuff about everything related to backpacking, whether it's the AT and thru hiking specific stuff, but also just more general gear advice. And you know, hearing that from you was a big help for me as well, because I've definitely noticed a similar thing, even though I have, you know, more thru hiking, you know, direct thru hiking related content on my channel. It's still the overwhelming majority of people. It's shifted a little bit now because of the mystery videos.
What's super funny is when I run into thru hikers all the time, and I can't tell you how many times I hear them say, oh man, I bought my backpack because of you. I bought this sleeping pad because of you. I bought this because of you, and I love it. So I know that there's thru hikers that watch the channel that, because they're even, you know, not every thru hiker is a gear nerd like me or you. So, you know, we test so much gear over here that there's definitely thru hikers that hear what we're saying over here, and they obviously like it to some degree because they're using the product. So it is funny to see that when it happens. Like I was in Wyoming hiking Wind River Range, I think, right where this oh my gosh, what channel? CDT. Yeah, going right through there. And I got stopped probably 8 or 9 different times by people like, holy cow, man, thank you so much. I'm using this and I just love it. And I'm like, oh, you're a thru hiker. Wow. Okay. I've hiked 8 miles today. How many have you hiked? Oh, 47. you know,
especially those CDT hikers too. I mean, those guys are something else.
They're insane.
Yeah. That trail is nuts, but, that's cool to hear too. And like, obviously there is still crossover, like thru hikers are using gear, weekend warriors are using gear. And so there is a lot of crossover and a lot of helpful information too. And speaking of meeting people on trail and having those interactions, getting recognized, it's the classic YouTuber thing to talk about. But in the last episode of Trail Tales, I told a story of like kind of a couple stories actually of maybe awkward or like embarrassing interactions I've had with people on trail because of YouTube. And one of them was totally my fault, to be clear. But so everybody go listen to that episode, the last one, if you haven't already. But I don't know. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, I'm not asking you to, talk smack about anybody, but I imagine you've gotten recognized quite a bit. I get recognized quite a bit, and I'm sure you probably get it even more than I do. So it's like, have there ever been any like funny or maybe kind of weird, awkward interactions with people on trail who recognized you from YouTube?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it happens. So it sounds really arrogant for me to talk about being recognized, but like, okay,
no, it
so
does,
like,
but I only bring it up because of the last episode. I told a couple funny stories, so it was just kind of on my mind.
So like here in Wisconsin, I like hardly ever get recognized because very few people backpack here in Wisconsin, like almost zero. Mm-hmm. And anytime I board a plane to go out west, somebody by the end of the flight will go, I didn't want to say anything, but I knew it was you. Oh yeah, I've had stewardess and flight attendants. I had a pilot one time. I've had so yeah, like people I sat next to on the airplane. Here's the best one. Here's the best one.
Okay.
So I board a plane and I sit down next to this couple on the airplane, and they are just looking at me, and they cannot believe that I've sat next to them. Like the look on their face is just like. They look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, I love what you do. Your videos are the best. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you're hilarious and all that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. That's really cool and stuff like that. And then they start talking about like The Office, and they start talking about how they just loved all my episodes on The Office. And I realize that they think that I'm John Krasinski and not Dan Becker. And I was like,
that is funny.
Yeah, dude. That's not me. And I know that I got totally deflated because I was so excited about how highly they were talking about. I thought they knew my YouTube channel.
Wait, so did they know that you had a YouTube channel? Like, did they realize after? Or they just purely coincidence, like just the fact that you do kind of look like them a little bit?
Oh, people comment all the time on my channel, funny. But yeah, they thought I was John Krasinski, so. Oh yeah, that was awesome.
That is so funny, dude. That's that's so funny. That's crazy that you're getting recognized like off trail though, because for me, I mean, again, your channel's bigger than mine, so I guess it makes sense. But on trail, I get recognized a decent amount, but off trail, it's only happened one time ever in my life. Have I ever been recognized off trail? Yeah, and it was actually just a few weeks ago. I was in Bangor, Maine. And I was in line for a concert, and some guy is like, "Hey, you hate hiking?" And I was like, "Whoa!" I was actually, on trail. I'm, at the risk of sounding like a, inflated ego or whatever, but I'm kind of used to it at this point. Like it's not uncommon. But off trail, like it caught me totally off guard because it never happens. That is the only time it's ever happened, really. I guess one time flashing, I got recognized in a grocery store, but it was. Was when we were hiking the PCT, and it was like in a PCT town, so it kind of felt a little more normal for it to happen there. But yeah, this guy was like, he recognized me in Bangor, Maine, of all places. So that's awesome. Interesting. Yeah, I kind of figured it'd be similar for you, where it's like on trail, I'm sure it would happen, but off trail, it wouldn't happen that much. So that's, and you're not saying it happens all the time, obviously, but it's like that's interesting. Maybe that's a little sneak preview of what's to come.
Yeah, I went into an outdoor store one time in the middle of Montana in some small mountain town, and I walk in and I start hearing my own voice, and it turned out they were playing my videos behind the counter.
That's funny.
And then when I walked in, you should have seen their eyeballs when they looked up from the video and they saw me standing there. They just about crapped their pants, which was pretty funny.
That's hilarious, dude. I've always been like, I remember one time I was on a plane and the kid next to me was like scrolling through TikTok, and at the time, one of my TikToks was like blowing up and had like a couple million views, and it was like currently like blowing up. And so I was just like kind of looking over his shoulder, like hoping it would come into his feed so I could kind of tap him, but it never happened. But I don't know, that's kind of funny, dude. John Krasinski over here. That is you guys. I never put it together, but you guys do kind of look alike, so I can see how it could happen.
It's the number one comment on my channel.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet. That's so funny. Anyways, dude. So another question I wanted to ask you. So how I feel. I don't know. I think you'll be okay with this because you've mentioned it before on your channel. It's like, how old are your kids again?
16, 14, and 11.
Okay, so they're the age where, they watch YouTube, I'm sure.
Yep.
And, I've heard before that, like, there was some survey, it might have been a few years ago at this point, but where they, like, asked kids, I don't even remember the age, but probably around that age, like, what their, like, dream job or their number one job would be growing up. And the number one answer was a YouTuber. And so I'm curious what your kids think of their dad being a YouTuber. Like, do they think it's cool? Do they think it's lame? Are they embarrassed? Like, I'm really curious about that.
So they're not embarrassed at all. What's funny is because if you look at my analytics of who watches my channel, the age it's like between like 30 and 60-year-olds watch my channel, right?
Yep.
Right. And so anybody under the age of 30, it's like, but there's like 0 teenagers that watch my channel. So if my kids' friends find out that I have a YouTube channel, they're like, "Oh wow, oh my gosh, really? What does he do?" And they're like, "Camping and backpacking." Oh, okay, yeah, that's really cool. And then they'll be like, "Well, does your mom work?" And then they'll say no, and then they realize, okay, maybe it's something bigger. So there's like a little bit of like a little shock value that kind of gets thrown off because they expect me to be like a dude perfect or something.
Yeah, Logan Paul, something.
But like my youngest certainly wants to be a YouTuber. My other two could care less,
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's cool. Though. I was always curious about that, just because. But it does make sense with our age. It's kind of funny because, like I said, my age analytics are pretty much the same. It's like, 25 to like 60. But, leaning more heavily on like the 35 to 50, 45, like that kind of age group. And it's always been like that. And it's kind of funny because, I'm 27 now. But when I first started my channel, even back then, the analytics were the same, like I said. And so I was only 23 when I started my channel. And I'm looking at these age analytics, after I got a little bit of traction anyways. So it was more than just a small sample size. But I was like, damn. The average age of someone who's watching my videos is like 10 years older than me, which I always found was so weird when I was like 23, 24. Like, dude, nobody my age is watching this stuff, which is kind of funny, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
That is strange though, because I feel like there's so many young thru hikers.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's skewed a little bit younger, like but still, it was like nobody under the age really of 25 was. That is kind of strange now that I think about it. Yeah, because there are a lot of like younger thru hikers, and I've been recognized and messaged by a lot of people who are younger than that. So I don't know. That is kind of strange, but that's just the audience for this kind of content. I guess it's interesting for sure. So another thing I wanted to ask you, because this is something that I've kind of, I don't even know the right word. Something I've kind of dealt with. For the lack of a better word, is like, I'm just going to say it before I keep stumbling over this. How has YouTube changed your perspective on backpacking itself? And I don't know, it sounds like you had done a little bit of backpacking before you started making videos about it, obviously. But for me, I was backpacking a lot for years before I ever made any sort of content about it. And so it's always been interesting for me kind of seeing the shift of like how making videos about it has kind of impacted.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. It's so interesting. Like so I had probably 3 years worth of backpacking experience and before I ever turned on the camera. I mean, obviously there I was hiking very locally because, it's just, if you're anybody that goes backpacking doesn't go weekly. They go like once or twice a year, unless they're a through hiker. I mean, they're just, or whatever. I mean, especially if you got a family, right? They're just going like for the vacation or the weekend kind of thing. So like, yeah, when YouTube came along, it was, oh crap. I got to figure out a way to get my wife to let me go more often, even though I work another full-time job because YouTube didn't support me back then. So, oh, great. I had to pick a niche that caused me to travel too, and it's not even my job. Like, now what? So, yeah, that almost for a while turned backpacking into work rather than fun because I felt like everything was having to be filmed all the time. And, it was just, I lost a lot of the enjoyment of it. But then I started traveling, like when it became more of a business and I was able to make enough money to travel. Then it was like, oh, now I'm actually going to places that I've only dreamt of. Like I'm going to the bucket list places that people dream of to go once in their life. And so then it became, it was still work, but, I think it was certainly, realizing what I've got.
Yeah.
like next week I'll be in Oregon backpacking with my 11-year-old. So for work, right? Like,
yeah, nice.
Like, yeah, like, dude, that like who gets to do that? So it's, I look, now it's like, yeah, for sure. But I think, I've also like, I've forgotten a little bit, and I hate to say this, I've forgotten what it's like to only have one setup of gear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense for sure.
So like I literally have a full on REI, and okay, oh my gosh, this is going to sound so arrogant, and I'm totally not trying to be arrogant. Please do not think this is arrogant because it's not. I just want to put it in perspective. I do, and you know this, you get so much stuff from companies that just almost ends up at your house and you forgot that they were even going to send it. Like just so much stuff. Like I have a literal REI at my house. Like I have every possible thing you can think of. And it was so much that last year I gave probably $10,000 worth of backpacking gear to the camp that we go to every year.
Oh, nice.
Our family can't. That's what I didn't want to sound arrogant, but I just want to put it in perspective. Like I took a full truckload and filled up the rear back seat of my truck, drove up, like 5 hours to this camp and gave them stuff that they don't have. Cause I'm like, what am I going to do with all this? So I've forgotten. I think all this has caused me to forget those types of things. So, sometimes when you're out on trail, you also forget that a lot of people can't afford this stuff, and you forget what it's like to hike heavy.
Yeah.
You forget what it's like to hike with blisters, so I think YouTube has kind of caused that as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I could definitely see that with your channel specifically because it is so like gear focused.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot of free or sponsored stuff too, but it's been a little bit different for me because I do have a lot of extra stuff for sure. It's kind of nice too because sometimes I'll go backpacking with like a friend that doesn't have the gear. Yeah. I can like give them some stuff to use.
Yep.
Which is nice. But I say no a lot of the time just because I'm sure you do too. I'm sure you get
all the
a lot
time
more requests than I do, but I don't know. I still have a pretty good amount of stuff, which I'm very grateful for too. And I'm also kind of, again, our hiking is a little bit different because mine's more, not always, but more like through hiking specific. And so I like really only want to take this. I'm less concerned with like experimenting and trying new stuff and trying to share that with people as I am with, making sure I have the right stuff for me. So I say no quite a bit. And I also I don't get, like I said, as much as you, I'm sure. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I need one day I'll buy a house and I'll have a full closet or a room or whatever dedicated to just everything. But right now it's like half of it's just sitting in bins at my parents' house. Half of it's just scattered on the floor in my extra room here. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I built a storage room in my basement specifically for backpacking gear. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty
so
funny.
bad.
It's pretty funny. But what a privilege it is too. Because like,
oh, for sure.
When I first started backpacking, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people listening, it's like, and yourself maybe as well, it's like you're just constantly looking through different gear and just like stuff that, and maybe it's a little bit different for me too, because I was in high school at the time, so I had no money. I had no means to buy a lot of the stuff I wanted. And so like the fact that, like, just thinking back to my perspective then, and then, kind of looking at it now that I'm getting like, a decent amount of stuff sent for free, it's pretty sweet. I'm like, damn, high school me would be so proud, like so excited. I gotta remember that. And it is such a privilege to be able to, it's one of the perks of the job, I guess. I don't know.
For sure.
It's fun. Dude, we're kind of getting towards the end here, so I think it's story time.
All right.
At the end of all these episodes, I always have my guest. Well, most of the time. Sometimes I forget. I've been pretty good about it lately. But it is called Trail Tales after all, so I like to have my guests share a story. And when I have people like yourself on that have, YouTube channels or content creators, I always like to challenge them to try to come up with something that they haven't talked about in a video or extensively. However, that's not always possible. I mean, for myself at this point, I've told every story that I could possibly tell. And so it's not always possible. I don't know. Were you able to come up with something that
I think I've got a story that's pretty interesting that will probably I don't think I might have shared it possibly like on a podcast somewhere, but like so it was about 2 years ago. I was hiking with some friends of mine, new hikers, and my wife was with me too. So we had 3 couples. All of us were married, and we're hiking along, and all of a sudden, some guy comes running the opposite direction and asks, "Is there a doctor around? Is there a doctor around?"
Oh boy!
And we were looking at each other like startled, like, what's happening? What's happening? And my buddy's wife happens to be a nurse practitioner.
Okay.
So she's like, "I'm a nurse practitioner. What do you need?" And he goes, "My friend, he's having a seizure. He's that way." And he points off in the direction and runs the opposite direction. And I was like, "You're like, what?" Like he was looking for another doctor or something. So she and I and everybody else started running. We ran about a quarter of a mile to find this dude on the ground laying there, just like he was sort of having a seizure, but he was like moaning and groaning and like snarling and doing all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, wow.
Turns out, and we were probably 50 feet from a 200-foot cliff because we were right on Lake Superior. Turns out this dude was completely high on LSD.
Oh, geez.
And the guy that was running towards us was the designated driver. Like he's the guy that doesn't take the LSD and make sure everybody else gets safe, right? So there were 3 people completely high on LSD. Now, when we got there, this dude jumps up, and I've never seen anything like it. Like a demon-possessed dog lunges himself at my friend's wife in order to try to kill her.
Oh,
like
man.
He was trying to kill her. Like and this is a big dude. He trips over a rock, falls down, smacks his head on another rock, and completely knocks himself out cold. So the other guys in the group both jump on top of him to hold him down. And I somehow had a cell phone signal right there and called 911. And the 911 operator says, "Yeah, we can get there, but we won't be there for like 2 hours because we got to figure out a way to get in there."
Yeah.
And we we held him down until he calmed down.
What a psycho.
Wow. So that was my crazy story. There you go.
That is certainly crazy. Damn. Yeah. Did he ever get in contact with you guys to apologize later?
No. We were like, "You tried to kill us. We're out of here."
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And so we let the other guys high on LSD just sit there and hold him down while we were like, "Let's go."
Oh man,
rescue's coming.
Those friends probably have a crazy story too. Like frickin' Mike over here, dude. Don't let this guy trip ever again.
My biggest fear is he was going to throw himself off that cliff or try to throw somebody else off that cliff, but I don't know. Man. Yeah. So we were gone, but that was crazy.
Hopefully he was okay. I'm glad that you guys were okay too. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh man, that It's funny. It's scary, but it's pretty funny too.
It was awesome.
I want to tell a story too. I meant to tell this earlier. Actually, it's definitely not as crazy as that. It's not crazy at all, really. But just another story to kind of close this out. So a few years ago, this must have been 2020, summer of 2020. Back when Flossie and I were living in Burlington, Vermont still. We had, Dan and I had talked a decent amount at this point. And I don't think we had each other's phone numbers yet, but we had been in communication on email. Actually, we must have if we had that phone call. Anyways, I just woke up one day and I was just scrolling through Instagram and I saw that you had posted a story saying like, oh, it's the classic thing. Like I'm stuck on an airplane or at the airport or whatever. And like, asking questions just to kill time or whatever. And naturally somebody asked you where you were going and you replied and said Vermont and like posted that on your story. And I was like, what? And
I remember,
there's only one real international airport we'll say, in Burlington. There's other in Vermont. There's other regional ones, but it's the main airport, the only real airport we'll say that has actual airlines that work out of it is in Burlington. And it was only a 5-minute drive from my house at the time. And so I was like, oh, well, he must be flying to Burlington. And so I quickly shot you a message and I was just like, hey, what are you doing here? And it turns out that Dan was flying to Burlington to buy a pickup truck, if I recall.
Yep.
And you and your wife, and you were literally just landing, buying the truck, and then hitting the road to drive right back to Wisconsin. We were able to quickly arrange like a parking lot meetup. You guys were at the Panera, and it was literally 5 minutes from my house. And so it was perfect, and we were able to just shoot a quick video and talk just for a few minutes. And it was really
awesome.
Cool. Yeah, it was really cool because this was like right in the peak of the Dan Becker jokes on my channel. And it was perfect because it was just like I was like afterwards.
How can I pass this up?
I know. I was telling Flossie, I was like, I can't believe when I woke up this morning, I was not thinking that I would just randomly be meeting Dan Becker. So it was cool. The only time we've been.
I remember meeting
person.
Flossie too.
Yeah, and Flossie. I dragged him along. It was a Saturday, I think. So I think we didn't really have much going on, so the timing worked out perfect. No work or anything. Yeah. So it was pretty funny. So that was awesome. Dan,
that was so fun.
Dan, dude, thank you. Thank you for doing this podcast. It's been a long time coming, like I said at the beginning, and I'd love to do another one. So
100%. Let's do it. So
thank you for coming on, and thank you for listening, everybody. Go check out his channel if you haven't. Go check out his Instagram and all that stuff. And thanks for listening, everybody.